They called him the lion who could not stand. His own stepmother mocked him openly, certain he would never walk, let alone rule. Years later, he would defeat a sorcerer king and found one of the richest empires Africa has ever known. Welcome back. Tonight, we travel to West Africa, to the Mandinka homeland along the Niger River in the early 13th century. Tonight, we are not talking about a kingdom already built. We are talking about a crippled boy, exiled and written off by everyone who knew him, who returned to build an empire from nothing. Tonight, we walk through the story of Sundiata Keita, the real Lion King. Settle in. Close your eyes when you are ready. The story begins now. His father was Nare Magan Konate, a Mandinka king with several wives and many children competing for his favor. His mother was Sogolon, a woman the griots remember as the Buffalo Woman, said to carry a strength and a destiny that set her apart from every other wife in the king's household. When Sundiata was born, the prophecy that came with him promised greatness. What arrived instead, in the eyes of the court, was disappointment. The boy could not walk. Years passed, and still he crawled where other children ran. The king's first wife, Sasuma Berete, watched with open satisfaction. Her own son, Dankarantuman, stood to inherit the throne so long as Sundiata remained what the court called him behind his back. Broken, cursed, no threat at all. Sogolon endured the mockery in silence, but she never stopped believing in what the griots had foretold. And then, the tradition says, came the day everything changed. Sundiata called for an iron rod, gripped it in both hands, and pulled himself upright, bending the metal as he rose. He walked. Not haltingly, he walked with a strength that silenced the room. The lion who could not stand had stood. But standing was not enough to erase the threat he posed. When Sundiata's father died, Sasuma Berete moved quickly to secure the throne for her own son, and she made it clear that Sundiata and his mother were no longer safe in their own home. Sogolon gathered her children and left, beginning years of exile that would carry them through the courts of kingdom after kingdom, never fully welcome, never fully safe. They wandered for years. Some accounts say 7. They passed through the lands of Mandinka rivals and distant hosts alike, testing which rulers would shelter a family with no army and no guarantee of return. At their side, through much of it, was a griot, a keeper of oral history and prophecy, whose role was not simply to entertain, but to remember. He carried the story of who Sundiata was meant to become, even when nothing in Sundiata's circumstances supported it. They found lasting refuge at last in the kingdom of Mema, whose king took the exiled family in and treated Sundiata not as a burden, but as a young man worth investing in. Sundiata grew up there, trained in warfare and governance, becoming, by most accounts, a skilled and respected figure in Mema's own court. The boy, who had crawled through his childhood, was becoming someone else entirely. Breathe. Let the years of exile settle. The prophecy had not been forgotten. It had simply been waiting. Back in the Mandinka homeland, a new power had risen, and it was nothing like the small, fractured kingdoms Sundiata's family had once known. Sumauro Kante, the king of the Soso, had conquered much of the region, including Sundiata's own homeland. The griots remember Sumauro as a sorcerer king, a ruler whose power came wrapped in fear and dark magic as much as in armies, a conqueror whose cruelty made even distant kingdoms uneasy. Under Sumauro's rule, the Mandinka people suffered. And so, eventually, envoys were sent out from the homeland, searching for the one person who might still be able to unite the scattered clans against him. They found Sundiata in Mima, grown now, capable now, and they asked him to come home and lead. He did not return alone. Sundiata spent the journey home, gathering allies, kings and chiefs across the region who had their own grievances against Sumaoro, who saw in this returning exile a chance to end the Soso king's grip on the land. Clan by clan, kingdom by kingdom, a coalition formed around him, bound together by the shared hope that this crippled boy the world had written off might actually be the one the prophecy had promised. The armies met at Kirina in the year 1235. The griots tell this battle as more than a clash of soldiers. They tell it as a duel between Sundiata and Sumaoro themselves, a contest where the sorcerer king's magic met its match in ways that old stories describe with as much reverence as any spear or shield. Whatever combination of strategy, alliance, and belief carried the day, the outcome was total. Sumaoro's forces broke. His grip on the Mandinka homeland shattered with them. You are here. You are safe. The story continues. In the aftermath of Kirina, the allied leaders who had fought alongside Sundiata gathered at a place called Kurukan Fuga. There, by tradition, they did something remarkable. They did not simply crown Sundiata and disperse. They established an order, a charter, remembered today as one of the oldest constitutions in human history, dividing authority among the clans, setting out principles for how the new empire would govern itself, how disputes would be settled, how power would be shared rather than seized outright by any single ruler alone. Sundiata was proclaimed Mansa, King of Kings, and the scattered Mandinka clans became something they had never been before. An empire, the Mali Empire, built not on the ruins of the family that had exiled him, but on a coalition of kingdoms that had chosen, clan by clan, to follow a man everyone once assumed would never walk, let alone rule. Under Sundiata, Mali grew rich on the same gold and trade routes that would later make his descendant, Mansa Musa, famous across the entire medieval world. Timbuktu and the other trading centers of the empire began their rise toward the wealth and scholarship that would define West Africa for centuries. None of it would have existed without the foundation Sundiata laid, a foundation built by a man who spent his childhood being told he was nothing. He was mocked as a child, too broken to matter. He was exiled by the family that should have protected him, and he returned to build an empire that outlasted every person who had ever doubted him. The ancestors held this, and now you know it too. And so the story rests here for now. Sleep well.